Welcome to another chapter of the Cinema Chats. And our guest today, I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
I am Ashley. No, I'm Ashley from at Ash Does Food, and I like to eat and travel, which is how we met.
Yes, Ashley has a really cool blog on Instagram and a really cool website that you can look it up on the link below. She shows food from all over the world. Her post will make you hungry, but like the good hungry.
Thank you.
So you should go and check it out. It's worth it. So Ashley, tell us where you're from. What do you do?
I'm from Calgary, Alberta. Grew up in Edmonton. And I am a marketing director at a barbecue company, which is really awesome. And I like to travel and eat, which is why I started my blog. And hopefully, maybe one day that will be all I do.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, how did that travel and eating adventure begin?
It began at a young age. My mom is Filipino, and before she married my dad, she traveled all across Asia and Europe, and she kind of did the same thing, but kind of more independently. And I kind of just always admired that she did that, so I wanted to do it as well.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
So explain us a lot about your blog and about the food and travel. Like, why do you link that so closely?
Yeah, so I like to write about food and travel because, like you said, they are linked. I like to eat the foods at the places I go to because when you learn about a culture's food, you learn about the types of agriculture and vegetables and foods that they harvest, maybe at a historical time, and that's how the recipe developed over time. It kind of just gives you a story that the country or culture has ingrained, and it's just really interesting to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking about eating, about culture and traveling, do you think that sharing a traditional meal with nationals help us to immerse ourselves more in a culture and to get to know more deeply about it? Why so?
Yes, I definitely believe that. When I had gone to Lima, I took a Peruvian cooking class where I learned, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 of your guys' different dishes. And that was on my second day in Peru. From then on, after going on different tours or talking to different people around, when they would mention the ingredients I had learned about, for example, that purple corn that you use for, I forget the drink it makes, but I remember it was mentioned many times. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, that. After learning that on the first day in Peru, it was mentioned so many times about the history of it throughout my different tours I had decided to take, that I felt that I more understood, why people love it so much and why it had stuck to the culture for so long. So I think it's important for people to eat wherever they go and also ask questions or do some research about why that recipe is the way it is. Is it because of the climate? Is it because of conflicts within the country? Sometimes it's both, and just a great way to also remember the history of the culture that you're going to, because sometimes we go somewhere, we get so excited, we don't learn anything, we forget, but food is an easy way to interact with the culture and learn things and get it to stick to your memory and bring it back with you to wherever you come from.
So, like, I bet, like, traveling around the world, you've seen, like, that while eating, many people have different habits about eating that are unique to the culture. How do you think that it's helpful as for us to wire ourselves to know about others more deeply?
I think learning about others and the etiquette and and manners and respect, what people consider respectful in different cultures, will help people learn how to take in people's cultures that they see in their own home. I find that when people are being ignorant or racist or just don't know what they're talking about but try to disrespect it, it's because they aren't educated about the culture. They aren't educated about why people do what they do. And I think it's important for people to learn those little details in each culture in order to know why something is the way it is. I just think it's the only way that people are going to learn to be respectful in the most sense, I feel.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's huge what you say, like
Yeah.
learning about the other culture. Because sometimes we tend to look down something that is very different, but actually it's just unique. And we need to see it as it is. And I think
Exactly.
I think like food brings that rich experience that you don't get actually any other way but by eating with people. So that is awesome.
Yeah. People need to also go into it with an open mind, because people can go somewhere they don't know anything about and try something with a closed mind and just use their own personal experiences and their own culture as a reference point of what's good. But if they go in with an open mind, they're going to understand more about why that food is put together and why certain things are the way they are. I keep saying that, but it's all about having an open mind.
Yeah, and I totally see why. So what are your top 5 international food favorites?
Oh, that's hard. Okay, well, I really liked ceviche. Not gonna lie, when I was in Lima, the ceviche was out of this world. I like lechon, which is, they have it in Peru as well, but in the Philippines, it's basically a roasted whole pig. I just love the crunchiness of the skin, the juiciness of the fat, and the saltiness of the meat. It's just like all around delicious. Oh, and I had it when I was in Peru also because I saw it and it reminded me of one of my favorite foods, so I had to eat it. Another one. This is tough.
I just made ceviche today. It was chicken ceviche, and I had like the lechon, the Filipino lechon in New Jersey. A Filipino brother made us for us. Oh my goodness, it was delicious.
Yeah. I would have to say I also love sashimi. When I was in Japan, I had some sashimi and it was delicious, I would have to say. I can't really remember which fish I had there because when you go somewhere, you have an assortment, right? You don't just choose one thing. So I just remember it being very fresh and delicious, just like the fish was in Lima with the ceviche, very fresh. And then, 2 more. Gosh, this is hard, especially because I eat so much food, I can't remember all of it. Let me think. Fried fish in the Philippines as well, tilapia. They have that everywhere, but it's really good. And I've never been to India, but I love Indian food like a lot. And I've had authentic Indian food made by, like, it's not westernized, and I really liked it as well. It was really spicy, but I would have to say Indian food, and that's a big place I really want to go to one day too. Yeah.
I make curry once in a while, but if I cool, I will make chicken biryani every day. That's my favorite. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in all these different experience, because you're talking about like immersing yourself in the culture while eating, what has been the biggest cultural challenge when you were a first timer going into different cultures? Like what were some things that you had to learn that were shocking for you, but it were nourishing at the same time?
Yeah. Well, I only traveled by myself one time so far. Well, no, a few times, but in the States. But I had traveled to Peru in the first week all by myself. And that was kind of a culture shock because, no one there speaks English. They all speak Spanish. And I had gone thinking I had learned enough Spanish to get by, but once you speak to people in Spanish that speak it all the time, they speak a lot faster than learning it back home. So I would have to say one of the things was going somewhere not knowing how to communicate with cashiers or anyone like that. But at the same time, I really appreciate it because when I figured it out finally, I felt very independent, and it almost made me feel kind of like adrenaline and excited, like, oh, I want to do this again somewhere else. And I had that same experience when I went to Brazil with the Portuguese there, because at least with Spanish, you're exposed to it, you know, in Canada and the US, but Portuguese not so much. So I had not recognized any words whatsoever. And that was scary, not knowing how to speak it. It was hard to get around, and I didn't have any roaming or Wi-Fi or anything. So having to navigate to different restaurants, not recognizing street signs or anything like that, that was kind of scary. But again, it made me feel like, oh wow, I imagine being here by myself, how great it would feel to actually learn to just get around and survive and make friends maybe in a place where I don't speak the language. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So how those cultural challenge have rewired the way you see things back at home? Because I think like every culture challenge experience like brings like a long-term effect on help us to think differently about something. So what will be your case?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned earlier about educating yourself in another culture, helping you when you're back home with seeing other people. So being by myself somewhere where I can't speak the language and experiencing those people here where they can't speak our language, it gives you a bigger sense of patience. It makes me admire people like that a lot more because they're choosing to live somewhere where they can't speak the language, and I haven't chosen to live somewhere, but I was only somewhere else for 2 or 3 weeks not speaking the language, and I found that difficult. But they come here and learn the language and learn to live here, and it just gives me more respect for them because it's a tough thing to go to live somewhere where you're not familiar. And I would say it brought me a lot more patience. It also made me feel like I should, you know, explain something more to someone that perhaps doesn't understand it so easily, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would just say patience, and yeah, that's mainly what I would say. It gives me, as well as like admiration for people.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's huge. I think about also all that.
I know that's like common sense, but it just.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about going deeper about it, because sometimes like some priorities are very similar. It's just like they're approached in a different way sometimes, and I think that's the beauty of from one culture to the other, that you learn why they do it sometimes way different than ours, or different than in Canada. That help us sometimes like more to learn, to be challenged to maybe some things that we want to take home.
Exactly, and yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, going somewhere where somewhere Spanish that I didn't know the language, it made me want to like when I come home, learn more about it and get familiar with it, because I definitely want to be immersed again in your culture, and I want to come more prepared so that I can learn even more, because while I felt I learned a lot being in South America, I feel like the language barrier probably filtered out some of the culture that I maybe missed because I didn't understand. So yeah, I think that it also taught me, you know, don't take time for granted, use it to learn things and prepare yourself for when you go traveling.
Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of experience in doing this, and I'm probably like, as we talked at the beginning, like culture and food are linked together by nature.
Mhm.
in most countries. So what will be your advice to a person who wants to do what you do in another country, like navigate the culture through food? What will be your aid and steps as to do that?
Well, honestly, I would say get to know, start with the basics. Get to know the foods that are within your culture, and get to know why they use the ingredients that they do. So, for example, why do we use maple syrup in Canada? Because we have an abundance of it, and potatoes, and things like that. Like in Peru, you guys have an abundance of potatoes, so there's so many different recipes that use these ingredients that you have easy access to. So I would say if a foodie really wants to get to know food and culture, start with their own. And if taking a class about your own culture's food is a resource that you have access to, definitely do it, because that's something that I will do here, especially after taking a cooking class in Peru. My mom was a cook growing up, but she's Filipino, so I learned about the food from there. And it definitely helps when you have someone to talk to you about, what does this spice do, or what does this do to this food when you boil it, or like different things, because when you cook foods different ways, obviously it creates the different flavors. It's not always going to be the same result cooked in a stove versus on a barbecue. So I would say start with the basics, get to know your own culture's food, and then from there go to local restaurants, always try to support local, eat their dishes, learn why they're making them the way they do. Local people not always, but often use family recipes. So, figure out why they're cooking their food the way that they do. And I don't say local as in your local McDonald's. Go to a local restaurant where there's only like one standalone restaurant or two or three, because those people put their heart and soul into their food, because that's their livelihood. So go to those places, eat their foods, even if you can't afford a big meal. Sometimes I want to go somewhere fancy and review it on my blog, but I can't afford like a whole $100-$200 meal, so I'll just order an appetizer, and then that will kind of let me test out that restaurant a little bit, and it's a little bit more affordable. So you don't have to have lots of money or anything to start a food page, food blog, food channel. You can either cook from home and learn recipes on the internet, on YouTube, learn from different cultures that way, or you can just sample at different restaurants and learn that way. Talk to the people that own the restaurant, maybe talk to the servers. If they've been there for a long time, they probably know information about the food, and from there you'll grow. And yeah, I think that's a great way to start. That's how I started.
That's awesome. That's very insightful. I never thought about it, because even just like eating the appetizer is a good way just to check that place food. Have you tried to make any international food back at home? And have you had any success at all with it?
A food I've made successfully that's international, I would say, is sushi. That one's pretty easy. I just had to get the rice correct with the consistency and stickiness, and I got that pretty well off that. Took two or three tries. I made ahi de gallina when I came back after learning it over there. That was awesome. I know Filipino food easily, so I don't really count that as an international dish that I attempted, but it always turns out good. What else? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what you count for Mexican food, but I've made like Mexican ceviche with the shrimp. I think it's a little different than the ceviche in Peru. So, yeah, I made that. Yeah, I'm always trying.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I bet it's really hard. I tried to make chicken curry twice here during the quarantine, and the second time has been really good. And the first time was like, what else?
Indian food has a lot of ingredients, so I'm impressed. Like my mom makes Indian food and I can't make it. It's so many ingredients. Even just like make butter chicken, there's like how many ingredients. So
and the bread. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is awesome. I'm gonna try actually to do double fry week Korean wings one of these days. Let's see how that goes. So, I love cooking.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite story?
Same.
So, what is your favorite story on traveling and eating?
And eating.
Or you can be separate too.
I would say actually, well, in in Brazil, I accidentally got hit by a motorcycle, so that was fun. I was crossing the street and didn't see the motorcycle, and they hit me. And that was on the way to a restaurant, so it's kind of food related. But I would say that my favorite, yeah, it's stupid. Let's see. I think that my favorite food experience would probably be in the Philippines with street food. Actually, anywhere with street food is always good because it's usually very affordable, so you could try many things at one time. And you're also exposing yourself to so many people, which we took for granted because now with COVID, we can't expose ourselves to people because of keeping ourselves safe. But I think just immersing yourself in the culture with street food allows you to see what locals are ordering, because a lot of times locals eat street food. You can see how it's made, because a lot of times it's made just right behind the counter. And it's not always the cleanest, but I don't really care about that when I'm traveling, which I probably should now. But when you're traveling and you want street food, you know it tastes good, so you just make the sacrifice. So, street food all the way. Yeah.
That's what's up. Were you able to try anticucho, cow heart?
Yeah, I tried it. I did. The only thing I didn't try when I was in Peru that I was disappointed with myself was quail. The guinea pig. Okay. Yeah. I had many opportunities, but I just never did. And then when I left, I was like, oh, when am I going to get the chance to eat that again? So, but I tried everything else. And yeah. I always go into a country with a list of must eats so that I make sure that I don't miss anything.
That's good.
Yeah.
I don't like cuy. I have tried but no, can do it.
Oh.
3 times. But
I heard it tastes like rabbit, and I've had rabbit.
Rabbit is more consistent in its meat, I will say.
Okay.
So, yeah, no. So tell us, like, after all those nourishing and awesome experience that you have of immersing you in the culture, what things do you learn while traveling and doing what you do that would you think is helpful for the people who is thinking about traveling, and why that should be their motivation to travel?
Yeah. So before, I had wanted to travel alone for a long time, and I was always scared to. And I had always looked to people that did it often and got their advice. And I still didn't feel comfortable enough to do it for a while. And I was always kicking myself to be like, actually just do it. Life is short. You have to do it. And finally, when I got the chance to plan a trip and go alone, at least for the first week, I finally realized people that want to travel, that are holding off on it, just need to do it. That's easier said than done, but I feel like that's the key. Just buy the plane ticket, do as much research as you can about what you want to experience, and go. And just use that checklist as your guide, because you'll feel overwhelmed when you go somewhere without a plan. But if you have a plan of at least the things that you want to eat, the places that you want to see, and maybe the events or experiences you want to have, at least you have things that you know you want to take back home with you. So I think that you just have to go for it. And that's what I feel I wish I had known years ago, when I had more opportunities to travel and decided to work instead, or decided to go somewhere I had been before, just because I was scared. So yeah, I would say just go for it. It's easier said than done, but once you do it and once you land and get off that plane, you're going to be so happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
that's my answer.
Yeah, that's good. I think you have a blog for people who are looking in for a guide or like suggestions, right, of what they can eat internationally, right?
I just started my YouTube channel for travel. I finished putting up my Brazil videos and then I'm gonna start my Peru ones. It's still new because my Instagram with my food is my main platform right now, but I am getting on YouTube and getting all the videos I had made in Peru and Brazil and the future travels on there. And then I'm also working on my website. Right now it's just fashion focused, but I'm switching it over to food and travel because that's kind of more where I'm at these days.
Yeah, if you're watching this video, go to her YouTube channel. There is in the link below. Look for the Joker video. It's
Thank you.
It is
That
amazing.
video was very fun to make.
Yeah. Have somebody asked you for them to do that for them, or like?
I've only been hired to do actual makeup, like for graduation or for wedding, but I would like to do that for somebody. If anybody out there wants me to do a Joker face on them, I will do it.
Yeah, I'm letting you know it's like legit. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you have a great day.